The Senate election in Kentucky in 2014 would be a midterm election. So that's my analysis of the situation. Since Ashley Judd versus Mitch McConnell will happen in 2014, what numbers would that be similar to? They're midterm elections, so it's not on a presidential year. In 2008, when Mitch McConnell ran, he ran on a presidential year. 2008 was when Barack Obama was first elected. So during presidential elections, there's actually a greater turnout rate in Kentucky. Kentucky has an abysmal turnout rate, traditionally, historically speaking, in midterms and governor's races and every other race. We were able to get nearly 60% in this last race, 59.7%, so 60% in 2012. But before all those, well, okay, so it wouldn't have the same turnout as the 2008 elections, right? So because they had the presidential year, it'd be a little bit more maybe if Judd enters the race, but I think it would have the exact same turnout rate as 2010. 2010 election was a midterm election. 2014 will be a midterm election. So if Judd were to win, that would also cause a major political realignment in the entire state. She'd have to get a coalition of working class people, homosexuals, women, unions, black folks, Mexicans, just a rainbow coalition. And Ashley Judd is the perfect person to do something like that. In 2010, there was a 41% turnout rate. So in 2012, it was a 60%, but 2 years before that, the general election in November, there was a 41% turnout rate. So 41% turnout rate for Rand Paul versus Jack Conway, Kentucky's current Attorney General, November election. So November 2012, 60% turned out. In 2010, just 2 years beforehand, 41% of Kentuckians turned out. So 41%, that's not the majority. In fact, the vast majority sat home. That's not a democracy. But anyways, 41% turnout rates in November 2010 election, Rand Paul versus Jack Conway. So we can expect a 41% turnout rate for Mitch McConnell's 2014 re-election bid. And that's important. That's important because 41% means that 59% of Kentuckians did not vote. And if 59% of Kentuckians did not vote, that's the majority. That's a big chunk of possible electorate. They're not registered voters, but they could be registered. They could be voters. And if historically we've had a low voter turnout rate along with our poverty rate. There's a 13.9% turnout rate in the primaries, May 2012, when they selected Mitt Romney, the Republicans did. There was a 28.6% turnout rate in November 2011. So November 2012 was 60%, but just a year before then was 29.8 or 28.6%. So that's less than half. Less than half for the month right before then. And then right before then, 2010, there was 41%. So that's both of them are under the majority. I think most likely it'll be the midterm elections. It's pretty high profile, but not presidential high. So 28.6% turnout rate in November 2011, Steve Beshear versus David Williams. That was November 2011. Then there was a 14.4% in May 2011 for the governor's race, 10.4%. So for the primaries, only 1 out of 10 Kentuckians are voting. 1 out of 10 Kentuckians are voting in the primary in 2011. This is 2 years ago. Then there's a 32.2% turnout rate in the May 2008 election. So, that's 2008, so that's 5 years ago. There's one statewide gubernatorial election in Kentucky that had a turnout rate of only 6%. So since Kentucky gubernatorial elections are held in the off year between midterm elections, midterm congressional elections and presidential elections was scheduled at the time, they say that there's less of a turnout rate for our governor's races because of that. Which is perfect for Frankfort because that means, less people voting means less people paying attention and more crimes that they can get away with. So that's a good thing. Let's see, 41% turnout rate, the low voter turnout rate, says that Ashley Judd has a very strong chance of winning. So she has a strong chance of winning if she targeted those unregistered voters. There's 60%. That's a big chunk of the pot are these unregistered voters. And Kentucky Republicans hate new voters because new voters vote Democratic. New voters aren't, as entrenched with the elite, the ruling elite. They don't have anything to be won or lost except for, just a better state. So more voters, new voters are most likely to vote Democratic. Ashley Judd, she should target those unregistered voters. I think that's the secret to winning the Senate, especially for her, since they represent the vast majority of Kentucky. Most Kentuckians are not voters. Most Kentuckians do not go vote. So Ashley Judd could have voter registration drives, just ambitious, massive voter registration drives. And voter registration doesn't even have to be partisan. It's just something you're doing good for the community. Most likely, if you get someone to register to vote, you think that they would vote for you. But it doesn't have to be partisan in nature. Just vote because that's what you're supposed to do in a democracy. If you're not voting, that's like the least amount that you can do in a democracy. If you're not voting, then you're not doing really jack shit for your republic. When people say, oh, I don't get into politics, I don't know anything about that, as if like, not knowing dick about your own government in a democracy is a good thing. I think that politics should be common water cooler talk. I think we should always be talking about our rulers and our elites, especially since we're allowed to, and people have fought and died for these rights. So in the May 2010 primaries, there's a 32.2% turnout rate, which was May 2010 was Rand Paul versus Trey Grayson, those primaries. And Trey Grayson had confessed that he voted for Bill Clinton in 1992 and was a former Democrat, so he wasn't a traditional Republican, even though he was handpicked by Mitch McConnell to carry the mantle of the disgraced U.S. Senator Jim Bunning. The Kentucky primary in May 2010 drew more votes for the Democratic loser than for the Republican winner. So pay attention to these numbers. Rand Paul received 206,986 votes, defeating Trey Grayson. Now that's the winner of the Republican primary. Now the winner of the Democratic primary, Jack Conway, he received 229,433, which is 23,000 more votes than Rand Paul. So that's the winner. The second place, Daniel Mangiardo, he received 225,000 votes. 225,000 votes, which is 19,000. About 19,000 more votes than Rand Paul had got. So that's the top two Democrats receiving more votes than the top Republican. It shows that there's a great enthusiasm here amongst the Democrats in the Democratic Party, especially for that race, Mangiardo versus Jack Conway. And I thought Jack Conway would pull it off. Mangiardo, the only thing Mangiardo seems to be good at doing is losing elections. That's what Mangiardo knows how to do. And talking shit about Kentucky's, Kentucky's Rose. Ashley Judd's Kentucky's Rose. Back off, Mangiardo. So that was in 2010. So that shows that there's a Democratic energy. There's enthusiasm in the Democratic Party. So for Rand Paul, for Jesse Benton, these people are political operatives. They will make the Democrats just seem like they're the dumbest people, and they'll talk about them like they're real stupid. They're politically savvy, and I would say they're better than Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell has no heart, so he doesn't mind, crushing somebody and, pulling all the stops out. But I think all politicians are like that. What makes the Pauls different, Rand Paul, Ron Paul, and Jesse Benton, is that they actually are underdogs. They're Tea Party, right? So they're not the traditional Republicans. So I feel like if Ashley Judd, if she was to target the unregistered voters, have voter registration drives, it would be good for Kentucky to help our dwindling voter turnout rates. but also that's how she would win. Ashley Judd, she would focus on the true blue Democrats, because there's a lot of Democrats that want to be Republicans. That's how Rand Paul was elected, because of the turncoat Democrats. But you get the true blue Democrats, the Democrats who actually are part of a union and care about working class values. Get those Democrats on board, get them to vote, get the independents to vote, and possibly some Republicans. Some of them are confused working class folks, swept up in Fox News' rhetoric. They think that their ridiculous reasons for the economic problems are accurate. But really focus on the new unregistered voters. I think that's the key to winning, and I also think that's the key to why Ashley Judd can win. 60% of Kentuckians don't vote. You register 20% of them. She's only down 9. She gets 20% new registered voters. That means she's double. She's winning by 11 points if she was to get a 20%. I mean, that's just who knows if she'll be able to get 20%. We've been around for a long time, and 60% of Kentuckians aren't even voting, so I don't know if she'd be able to get 20% out. Another crazy statistics I just heard, actually, only 40% of Louisville residents are graduating. Only 40% of Louisville graduates, or Louisville citizens, are graduating. 40%. That is academic genocide. That is ridiculous. That is embarrassing. So let's see. So she'll change the bluegrass forever. So the fact that she's doesn't represent Kentucky. I'm a Democrat. I'm Kentucky. Born in Covington. Raised in Gent, Kentucky, in Warsaw, Sparta, Northern Kentucky. Been in Louisville for 3 years now. I'm born and bred Kentucky. So I'm a Democrat, and I'm for Ashley Judd. I'm not against coal unions. I'm against the coal companies who are exploiting other people, mechanizing, kicking out jobs, polluting the streams. King Coal has had a iron grip on Frankfurt ever since I've known Frankfurt, ever since I've been paying attention to it. And I mean, they're big business. They own the state. I mean, of course they do. So for them to say that she doesn't represent Kentucky, I think this is absolutely ridiculous. Ashley Judd has a very good chance of being a senator of Kentucky, and she'd be wonderful. She'd be great. She'd be good at it. She might be young and naive when she first walks in there, but I think that could be used to her advantage, and eventually, hopefully she gets her sights on and goes in there and does exactly what she wants to do. When Huey Long first went into, I want to say, the governor's palace, maybe the legislator, maybe out of national, I don't know. Huey Long eventually goes to some governing body, and he's just sitting there declaring, "Hey everybody, I'm here. Huey Long is just coming to the building." That's exactly how I would like to go in, and it's also how I would like for Ashley Judd to walk in. I'm not running, but when I'd like to get into politics eventually, but that's how I would like to get into. That's how I'd like for her to get into. I don't know if she'd be able to do that or not. So Ashley Judd, I love you. I think Kentucky would love you. I think you'd be one of the greatest senators we've ever had. So hopefully you run. You definitely got a chance, and you get people talking. So that's a good thing already. Okay, so Rand Paul, Mitch McConnell, Jesse Benton, all these guys are just gang banging Ashley Judd. They're just taking her name and reputation, and they're just smearing it all over across Kentucky. They're just talking trash, just talking as bad as they can. They're running these ads against her, even though she hasn't even declared any candidacy. And the things that they're asserting are ridiculous. She lives in Tennessee right now, but she's born and bred in Kentucky. She goes to UK games. We've seen her at UK games. She champions Kentucky when no one else champions Kentucky. Where's your George Clooney's at? Where's your Johnny Depp's? We got people that's born and raised here. Even Miley Cyrus, Billy Ray Cyrus is from Kentucky. We don't see any of these people coming back. They were born and raised here, and then they go to Hollywood and they stay. Ashley Judd came back, and we recognize that. We see her, we recognize her as one of us. So for them to say that she is not Kentuckian is ridiculous. It's ridiculous on a number of levels. But Rand Paul was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's born in Pittsburgh. He lived in Texas for 20, 30 years. So he's born in Pittsburgh, lives in Texas 20 to 30 years, and he's been in Bowling Green for the last 20 years. Ashley Judd she was born in California, raised childhood, most of her life was here in Kentucky, out in Appalachia. But she's got roots, 10 generations of roots. Actually, her people came off the Mayflower. When they got off the Mayflower, they came to the hills of Kentucky.